Hey, how's it going? And welcome back to the show. Today I am turning 21. In a few hours I will be 21. Now, given that there are a lot of things which should be expected from someone, you'd expect someone at the age of 21 to recognize the difference between right and wrong, for example. Now, this is a pretty big thing. Being able to turn 21 in a few hours, me doing this will be legal. And of course, as much as this standard of 21 instead of 18, I think that's stupid. There's a big margin and there's a lot of things. So imagine an adult who doesn't know the difference between right and wrong. What is that? By the way, that's gonna be the topic for today. I'm probably gonna be live streaming when I come home from work talking more about this, and this is obviously an unscripted video, pretty rare, right? But I thought we'd be talking about morality, and morality is a lot of things. It's one of the most complex ideas you could find, but one thing that it is objective. Morality is objective. Now, it's not objective in the way that you might hear about it. A lot of people, most people who claim that morality is objective, use that as a pretext to say that there is a God. There has to be a God since morality is obviously objective. And how do you explain objective morality? Well, that insinuates that there must be a God. Except that's not true. Objective morality is based on three main components, none of which include God, by the way. The first one is suffering, and we're going to break that down from there. So, suffering, a lot of the time you can, of course, the reason why people might say morality is subjective is because you can assess it based on subjective things. That's how you can, refer to it. That's how you'll be able to indicate, oh, this is moral versus this is immoral, because we have a subjective intuition, and that's what we rely on the most to be able to tell if something is moral or not. But one thing you will tend to agree if you don't think morality is objective, well, whatever happens, whenever you have a bunch of different people with a bunch of different opinions, now at baseline we tend to have very similar moral philosophies that form a basis for moral values. Murder is wrong. Stealing from someone, lying in a lot of incidents, with a moral basis that's pretty firm when it comes to just on baseline, this is wrong. When you justify why things are wrong, people tend to have the same justifications a lot of the time. And this stems from, firstly, the principle of suffering. That is the very first component to objective morality. You're able to suffer. Now, people can objectively say, I am experiencing pain. Once you have a now, this is starting from a 1D model. How do you know objectively that you are feeling bad, that you're experiencing negative effects? Well, we value our own well-being, and we can tell subjectively from a subjective standpoint. We can say, I am suffering. I do not like this experience. There are positive stimuli, negative stimuli, and you can infer subjectively that such and such are bad things. You don't want to be suffering, and this um, goes pretty much evenly throughout the species. Like, what type of stimuli do we dislike? Pain. What causes pain? Well, it's pretty much the same throughout the species. Well, first of all, you start with that basis. People valuing their own sense of well-being. Now, how do you account for that? Well, subjectively. Now that's why people tend to say, oh, morality is subjective, because the very baseline of how do you tell something's right or wrong? Well, if it hurts others, if it's hurting somebody, well, how can you tell? Where can you start with this? Oh, it's hurting somebody. How would you be able to know what somebody else is feeling, whether they're even real? Well, we sort of have to just assume that. But if you can assume, oh well, yourself, you're able to suffer, you're able to feel pain, you're able to experience different degrees of negative versus positive stimuli to different degrees, enjoy them more or less. We can actually calculate this in your brain, because this pain you're feeling, it is objective. That, like, if somebody tells you when they have a knife in their I don't know, somebody sticks a knife in you, somebody tells you, oh well, that's not hurting, I don't feel this pain, I don't think it's real, they would be wrong. They would be objectively wrong. You are feeling this pain, and you can calculate levels of pain, levels of, like, this emotion is an objective thing that you only are able to process through your subjective lens. But it's real. This pain is real, and it can be calculated by just calculating the what's it called, the chemicals in your brain. You can objectively see a spike in dopamine when you take drugs that are supposed to cause that. those are evenly throughout the board. You can objectively say this medicine reduces increases your dopamine level. So with that said, we can all say, okay, certain things cause suffering, and we can say from a subjective standpoint again that suffering is bad. We don't like suffering. And again, like what I was saying with the objective thing, most people they will have different opinions. And why is that? Well, because at baseline we tend to have very similar opinions, but how do people form opinions on things? Well, there's a lot of context. There's a lot of what's it called? There's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of things, and how people tend to come to their opinions tends to be on these very basis morality things. And like we tend to have the same morality at baseline. Don't murder. Don't treat others the way you want to be treated. Golden rule. And how do people build up a moral compass based on that and based on the experiences that they've lived? Now, the thing that makes the lines blurry, the things that make different people disagree on so many things, is that we all live life through different scopes, through our own lens. So we all see the world through our own experiences. So we all have different visions that'll tend to bring us to different logical conclusions. And on top of that, we tend to enjoy having people to hate on. Like negativity tends to stimulate us more than positivity. So when like our brains are sort of just manufactured to try to look for somebody to disagree with and to hate on, people will end up having like there'll be all this nuance that'll create different perspectives where like people will disagree on a lot of things, especially when we're wired to want to disagree with one another. But on top of that, there are different experiences which bring us to just none of us have the full context. And that is why when different people who disagree, they tend to come together, what tends to happen is that we tend to find agreement. When people who disagree talk things out, what tends to happen is that they find some agreement. They start understanding one another's position, where one another is coming from, as long as they're actually engaging in the debate for productive reasons, as long as they aren't just, oh, well, I know that you're wrong no matter what. I'm not trying to realize like where you're coming from, try to understand that better so I can see maybe I'm wrong. Like if people have open minds when they come into a debate, what tends to happen is that they'll tend to come closer to an agreement. A lot of the time they have to agree to disagree on some things, but you tend, like, as you talk more, you erase this nuance, you bring more context onto the table. When people do that, they come together and talk, they tend to converge towards an agreement. What does that tell us? Well, that tells us that the more this context being breached, the more this lack of info, this lack of context is resolved, the more people tend to agree on one thing. It tends to confirm onto one thing. So what does that tell us? Oh, well, maybe there's an objective morality, and the reason why so many people disagree on so many things is because nuance, because different perspectives. We just disagree because we don't see life from the same angle. And different people see different things, come to different conclusions based on different things. But at the baseline, what constructs morality? Well, first thing, you're suffering, you base that on yourself. So, oh, well, I am suffering, I don't enjoy this. You can, like, the only way to really, express that and to, put that into context, to act upon it, is to go on your subjective intuitions. But we can calculate that, and people can see, oh, well, yeah, I am suffering. If somebody else is suffering, they can tell. And that's step two. Once you recognize that somebody can feel positive and negative experiences, recognize that they are feeling negative and positive experiences, have the objective realization that I do not like and I wish to suppress as much as possible negative experiences, and I want to do the opposite for positive experiences. So they have this value, which will become what's it called? Which will establish a state for morality in multi-dimensions. So when there are multiple people, at baseline you have yourself, so you can do this experiment on yourself. And where morality comes in from just suffering and valuing your own sense of well-being is that the human species is a collaborative species. That's how we got to prosperity to such a degree. That's how we the human species developed to what it is. It's because we sort of hyper fixated on our ability to collaborate, to work with one another, and what that requires is empathy. Now, how does empathy come? Well, firstly, you realize all of these things, all of these moral values in one dimension, like in a world where you cannot experience your own suffering. You can subjectively test that through your experiences. Oh, well, I know that I know how this feels, how much I hate it, or how much I want that to happen if it's a positive thing. And you can logically just extend that once we go from individual suffering to morality. You can see others around you and realize that, oh well, these people, they like their brains work like mine, they think like me, they act like me, they'll respond to negative stimuli like me. And you can start to understand that these people around you, they value their own sense of well-being just as much as you do. And for that reason, if you're going to value your own well-being, it's sort of illogical to not value these other people's well-beings when their well-beings matter just as much to them as yours does to you. And like, there's no reason to assume that any one person, whether it be you or whether it be someone else, would be more valuable. Because if you're going to say, I'm more valuable because I value myself more, well, the other person's just going to say, well, I value myself more. So you have to understand, well, how much does every person value one another? And that's what, like, morality gets a really, really nuanced, and there's not a thing, there's reciprocity. That's going to be the next step. Because obviously, if somebody hurts you, you have to understand, oh, well, you can't just hurt people if you're not going to follow this moral guideline. You know that doing something is bad, you're going to do it anyway. Well, you deserve that. And again, like, this goes back to our subjective intuitions. Like, you will tend to notice that people will agree on morality, even if they're in the wrong. Like, somebody who I know for damn sure, if I was if I did something bad and somebody like let me know, hey, reflect on that. By the way, you were like, I don't know, I would have probably been acting on impulse, just not thinking about what I'm doing. Some comes up to me, brings up, hey, your actions have hurt these people in this way, and you didn't need to do that. You absolutely didn't need to do that. The average person, the normal human response to that is, oh shit, whatever's come to me, I deserve it because I did this wrong. And in that case, it's this reciprocity even resonates within our hearts. We're able to understand it. If we did something wrong, if you were scolded as a child, and like, you know, a lot of things you learn when you're a child, that's your upbringing, that's what brings you to like your moral senses and all. Like, you have had experiences where you were just doing something on impulse, you weren't really thinking of the consequences of what you were doing to others, you were just being selfish, not thinking straight. Then somebody told you, oh well, did you not think that, by the way, like, these people who would have relied on you not doing that, did you think of the consequences of your actions onto others? And they told you that, and you felt bad, and you felt, oh well, yeah, I deserve what's come to me, I should like have to clean this up, because reciprocity, this works both ways. Now, this whole thing, and again, people will tend to agree with that. I don't see why there is the need for a god for this whole thing to be true, because like, people will say, oh well, what if someone disagrees with that? What if somebody goes up and says, oh well, I don't value other people's lives, and I think that other people's suffering, well, valuing that is worthless. I don't think other people's well-beings matter. Well, first thing, I'm guessing the first like a breach with that would be that this person would probably tell you that they value their own sense of well-being, because we pretty much all do. But either way, if somebody came up to you and told you, oh no, I don't value the well-being of others, oh, we ought to do the right thing to, no, they would be objectively wrong. That's the thing. Like, this isn't a subjective idea. We all have this within us, and the fact that the more context is the more like nuance in context, we just don't have the same context, the more we tend to talk to one another, agree on things. Yeah, the more we tend to talk to one another, like, explain our logic and our context, our perspectives. The only thing that's really restraining morality from looking objective across the board when you look at people's opinions is that the lack of context, the lack of perspective, that we all have different perspectives, because what makes up our opinions tends to be that, a lot of it. Like, there is no other explanation for when we tend to talk things out, we tend to like find agreements, then we all tend to have like what's it called? We all tend to have a similar moral compass at baseline. And again, like this moral compass, it's not like this isn't what's it called? This isn't a coincidence that our moral compasses align on one thing, and when we talk things out, we tend to come to an agreement because it stems from our suffering. We can all intuitively just deduce that from our subjective experiences. But again, this isn't a subjective thing because how do you infer that? Like how do you like piece it together yourself? Well, through your subjective experiences. That's how you intuitively figure out what is and isn't moral. But you can classify that on an objective scale. You can say, oh well, somebody's suffering, they wouldn't want that. And then when you look at like a big scale, oh well, there are people around you, you logically understand, oh well, these people, they value their own sense of well-being as much as I do. And in a functioning society, if you want people to be happy, you have to abide by these types of moral values. And what do we all share? What is innate to our species? So no God, no. What makes morality such a thing? Well, it's specific to us. Again, like people might say, oh well, it's not really objective. It's like without a in the context of just without a social context, there is no morality. Well, yeah, like there are a lot of things. The concept of pretty much every concept that we have. Well, if we didn't have a universe, there are a lot of situations. If you know anything about that, basically with a lot of constants, just random constants, like the what's it called? The thing that constant for dark energy. A lot of constants that if they weren't fine tuned exactly to what they are, pretty much, the universe wouldn't exist. Well, guess what? In that world, a lot of concepts, like even chemistry, wouldn't exist. Does that mean that that concept literally makes no sense? Well, of course not. So morality only exists within a social context, and we make that based on the social context. But within the social context, it absolutely exists, is real, and is objective without needing a god to prove its existence. Like, it doesn't have to be, like, the only thing that's intrinsic is how we want our species to move forward, how people, how individuals value themselves. And yeah, morality can change over time in the fact that, oh well, people can change what they value over time. Something that would have made somebody suffer back in the day, if you like some that would have been generally seen as a negative stimulant, like you are hurting someone unnecessarily, they didn't do anything to you, that is objectively wrong. And like in the future, this morality may change in the sense that like what people value, like things that people are very afraid of, really value, what's it called, just abstraining from having upon themselves, that could change. But at baseline, the idea that people are capable of feeling pain, of feeling like negative stimuli, and we want people to be as happy as possible, and therefore, if we want society to keep being happy and prospering, which is the direction that our species has taken. Again, that's the direction that people want to take because it's a damn good direction. That is the basis for morality. And you can like explicitly see like what makes people suffer, just like what makes people's hobby. It's like torture, for example. That is a method, that is a studied method, it is an objective method. We know that people we know that the method of torture, what it does is it inflicts pain on people so as to get them to speak, for example. If we weren't able to know that certain things apply certain, like objectively apply certain stimuli to people that they will have a certain response to, such as I don't like, I like, drugs wouldn't be a thing, torture wouldn't be a thing. So we know that, and we can apply that to different people if we aren't assholes, if we're gonna value other people as well. And that's the idea of morality, wanting not only yourself but others to prosper, because it only logically follows if we're going to like acknowledge that we intrinsically value our own sense of well-being, we should value others' sense of well-being too, as long as they aren't hurting us. If somebody's not hurting anybody and we go and do something bad to them, that is objectively wrong. That isn't like subjective, and that's why people, like a lot of people who aren't gonna be religious, they're gonna say, oh well, morality, it's like it's actually just a subjective thing. It's just like but we can still, oh well, somebody is going to tell you that like murdering a bunch of people, that's wrong. Oh well, but we have like these normative like understandings that, oh, things like murder, yeah, that, but it's not objectively wrong. It's just that given our social norms, this is such a ridiculous point that everybody sort of agrees that it's like stupid, that it's not even worth debating on it. But if you don't agree that it's objectively wrong, somebody could just have a better take, a better explanation, and then like you have to be able to say this is objectively wrong. The Holocaust was objectively wrong. It's not up to interpretation. It's not like, oh well, given our normative like standards, like you might technically be right if you want to get into the like super nitty gritty details, but at this point it's like the conversation is meaningless because most people just what's it called, like practically speaking, just aren't gonna follow with your line of reasoning. That's just not how we operate. But how do we operate, and why do we all operate towards this way? It's not just by coincidence that we tend to have, again, it's not just by coincidence that we all tend to agree, like, oh well, the Holocaust, yeah, that's bad. We're not even going to really bother debating somebody who will say, oh well, yeah, all of these people were killed, but that is right because life doesn't have value. Well, we know life has value. That is a fact because we value it. We can, and again, that's where people say morality is subjective because we only subjectively deduce. But what is value? Again, value is a word that we created, and we can say, oh well, value, different people can value different things. Yes, but we can recognize objectively that we tend to value our own sense of well-being. We know that our sense of well-being, that's on an objective scale. It can be like objectively calculated whether something, like what impact or what degree is having a positive or negative influence on you, and you can see that on other people. And like, yeah, from there, treat others the way you want to be treated. You should do that. And when the where the lines get blurry is that people will tend to assume that, like, they'll tend to not treat others the way they want to be treated, but assume that the other person just has bad intent. Because a lot of people will assume that if bad things happen around them, people tend to develop victimhood complexes, for example, and that's how these types of things happen. As Secular Talk points out, a lot of genocide, it comes from thinking you're the victim, and that's where reciprocity comes in. You're like, oh well, you did these horrible things to me, so we're doing it back to you. Except that that tends to come from a lack of context, and just again, people wanting to avenge things that either aren't necessarily worth avenging, aren't really what you might claim that they are, or you might be avenging these things but not against the ones who are actually responsible. That's what tends to happen with wars. You see that with war happening right now. But yeah, I thought I'd break this down. Of course, I went on a fucking tangent. Earlier I was just having a discussion with that, and I didn't go on tangents. I said everything that I just said within a matter of like maybe 3 minutes. But well, here I am. Just probably, I wonder how many times I've repeated myself in this. Well, either way, I hope that people have enjoyed this video on morality. I will be turning 21 pretty soon, and I will be live streaming and celebrating being able to do this legally. So hopefully y'all have enjoyed.